How do you do? This is Trans-American President Loki, also known as Trixie the Golden Witch, and you're in the middle of Vlogust, the show where I do a vlog almost every day for all of August. Sometimes out here in Kentucky, the power ain't so good, and you can't always do what you think you're gonna be able to do every single day, because it is hurricane season from all summer through all fall. But you should listen to my album Hurricane Season, linked in the description below, along with all the other hip-hop stuff that I do. Anyway, let's talk about Loki. A lot of people online, when talking about Marvel Phase 4 and us going into Phase 5, give me the impression that they either didn't watch Loki all the way through, or maybe didn't understand it, didn't check out all of the different TV shows. People keep saying things like, the Marvel shows are coming out too fast. But like, there's 6 episodes apiece, and they release like 3 a year. It's slower than any TV show I've ever heard of. It's pretty easy to keep up with all of it if you're actually interested in the whole storyline of these movies, which I am. And it's kind of really important what happens at the end of Loki. So, in case you're not familiar with the story, in Avengers Endgame, there's a part where, through their time travel, they find themselves back in 2012 when Loki was the villain during the first Avengers film. And that version of Loki, which had died canonically inside of the Marvel Universe during Infinity War, gets a hold of, I think, a Infinity Stone or something that allows him to teleport himself into out of that time period or something like that. He becomes a time aberration and gets captured by the Time-Space Administration. So the version of Loki that we had as of the end of the first Avengers movie is now the Loki of this TV show. But while he's at the TSA, he's first of all confronted with like overwhelming power levels. Like, these people are just conceptually on a way higher level than anything we've dealt with so far. They use Infinity Stones as paperweights around here. They're just not even like on the register of the power level of these people. So this is showing us how, like, post Endgame, we're dealing with forces that are just like far, far beyond anything that we have any conception of how to deal with, and that the only reason that, you know, humanity isn't just annihilated by these people is that they have no reason to, or they are in fact the ones keeping balance and protecting life in the universe, and so on and so forth. Most of this show is about the build-up to the fact that He Who Remains, or Kang the Conqueror, is the one who is keeping all of time-space organized. Basically, he is keeping there from being too many branching timelines by making sure that anything which is going to divert the universal timeline too far, like, is exterminated. So, for instance, in one universe, there was a girl version of Loki called Sylvie, who was able to become king instead of Thor. And that was too different for the universe to accept. So while she was just like a child, the Time-Space Administration decided to annihilate her. But she ended up escaping and has just been on the run from them and grown up that way. So she's now an adult version of Loki, who is actually very different from pretty much any other Loki that exists. Not just because of the fact that she's female, but that she would have been king and didn't get the opportunity, and instead has been a fugitive on the run in like a time-space sense, in a way that no other Loki has ever had to even understand. There just isn't another Loki who's grown up being on the run from the TSA. And so she's got a very different mentality from the other ones. More so than being an extremely untrustworthy person, she is an extremely untrusting person, because she's constantly been hunted by basically the only person who can think on the level that she can, Kang the Conqueror, somebody who's aware of himself across multiple dimensions, who, you know, arrived here from 3,000 years into our future, being possibly the descendant of Reed Richards, if we're following comic canon. And since we have the Fantastic Four coming up, Reed Richards is in the canon. Kang is, again, from like the year 3021 or whatever, so like he's far enough in the future that he looks enough like Reed Richards that he could be a descendant of that actor. So I think it's possible that we are going to go that route and have him be directly connected by blood. But that's like the smartest guy in all of Marvel canon, and this is his descendant who is like multiversally intelligent. He's basically Rick Sanchez, and had like the Council of Ricks arc already, in his own past, is the way that it's presented. We do have some Rick and Morty writers on these shows, like Loki. So the most interesting character turns in the first episode of Loki, which I absolutely love. It has a lot of visual similarity to the old 70s Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy BBC show, which I think is really great and a lot better than the other Hollywood movie. So there's like a lot of the visual iconography of that feels reflected here, but brought to a much higher budget and, more modernized look, and it's great. There's lots of absurdist humor and just like, again, power scaling that is completely otherworldly and beyond anything that's been done. Our Loki ends up watching a video that like shows him the entire rest of his life from the universe that we've watched by watching all the Marvel movies up through his own death. And so basically he gets to witness his own character arc, think about it, like understand why he made all the decisions that he did and what kind of person he ended up becoming, that he ended up sacrificing himself, but also realizing that like it was a mistake, and how do I deal with being emotionally now the same person that I know I could be, but how do I be a better version who, doesn't make those mistakes going forward, because I'm already prepared for who I've become, and, all those, I could like sort of skip all those steps. And it makes him a really interesting character that is basically a new Loki, unique to this show, that is our new Loki going forward. And he is a more heroic character than he ever was before, because he's seen himself become a hero and is now kind of doing it on purpose because he believes in the version of himself that he saw there. So I thought it was pretty emotional and well done the way that they introduce his character. I also really conceptually like Sylvie. I also like the way she looks. It just so happens that I have a very similar hairstyle, and so I was immediately drawn to the character, like, oh wow, it looks like me. And the whole show is about narcissism and being in love with yourself, and being the type of person who would look at a character that kind of looks like you and go, oh, that's literally me. So this is my literally me show. It's interesting to note to me that like Loki in the comics is presented as being gender fluid and sort of a shapeshifter who just turns into, different genders, different forms, becomes a horse sometimes. And in this, instead of like presenting Loki as like himself somebody who would do all that stuff, because it's not really the way his characters come off in the movies so far, instead they, imply that there are slightly different variations of him that would be like totally different physically and contextually, but like still end up having the same kind of mindset. And I think that the more Loki sees these different versions of himself, the more open he becomes to the idea that he is all of those things, that he could have been an alligator. And, when he sees it, he just kind of makes sense of it in his own mind, because even though it's like bewildering, he's like, you know what? I could accept that. I get it. I get how I can be an alligator, whatever. It makes enough sense to me, so like that's part of the humor and the brilliance of where this show ends up going. I'll say that I think the middle episodes are definitely the weaker part of the show. I adore Owen Wilson's performance as Mobius. I think that he really just comes off so incredibly likable and charming, and he, his growing to believe in Loki sincerely, even though Loki's constantly fucking with him, is I think what allows Loki to end up being a hero, is that there is somebody who like believes in him that much, and he passes that belief forward into Sylvie, where he really sees her as like she's gonna make the right decision in the end. Whether or not she made the right decision in the end is up in the air, but I think she did, because ultimately the point of this show is about free will and how chaos really is like the ultimate emblem of free will, because chaos is not necessarily, it's not untraceable. Like chaos is something that can be mathematically traced, but it's just incredibly complicated. And so when you make like a really complex scheme, you are trying to control chaos. And so that's where Loki resides. But Loki needs there to be the possibility of chaos in order to thrive. If there's a limit to how much chaos can exist, Loki can't keep coming up with new schemes. So to me, it is in Loki's nature to want there to be as much chaotic potential as possible. And therefore, like, it makes the most sense for Loki, even though there's an opportunity for Loki to be in control of the chaos and to run the universe and decide what is or isn't aberrant, ultimately that won't lead to as many possibilities as just unchaining the universe and letting it go. And basically it just comes down to, is Loki as brilliant, as capable of managing the chaos as Kang is? There are versions of Kang that are more evil, versions of them that want more control. Maybe there'll be versions that want more chaos, versions that are trying to be what Loki is also, supposedly trying to be. But Sylvie being somebody who just doesn't trust anyone, doesn't trust any system to run the universe, would make the decision of, nah, fuck it, I'm killing Kang and I'm letting the universe spiral out of control. So where we end up at the end of Loki is with, after this incredible scenery chewing performance from Kang's actor, I don't remember his name, but it's one of my favorite performances I've seen in a show in recent years. He ends up being killed, but he's like, hey, a bunch of versions of me are gonna come and fuck shit up. And at the end of the show, Loki is in a timeline, in a universe where Kang seemingly has already conquered. So that's definitely gonna be explored in Loki season 2. And then you've also got Kang is supposed to be like the villain in Quantumania. Obviously, the Kang Dynasty is one of the Avengers films. So this is going to be the big villain turn, is different versions of this character coming in from all sides. And so for Loki, it's a battle of like, who is the bigger villain? Who is the more capable of keeping things out of control and personally thriving within that chaos, as opposed to trying to keep everything in control and only, putting yourself in a position to be deposed by somebody who wants things to be a little bit different from the way you want them to be. So yeah, I would say I'm on Sylvie's side. I would have made the same decision. And I'm excited, really excited to see more of that performance, different versions of Kang, to see all these characters return and where they're going to go from here. This was one of my favorite shows of recent years. Even with a couple of weaker middle episodes, the early stuff and the later stuff is so good that it still ended up being like a 9 out of 10 for me. So, yeah, you should watch Loki. If you want to see more of my content, subscribe to the channel. Go down into the description to see links to all the other channels where I do podcasts, hip-hop music, hip-hop reviews. If you subscribe to my patreon.com/goldenwitchfire for $5 or more every month, I will rant about whatever you want in a big live stream that I do at the end of each month, where I rant about everybody's rants. Occasionally, I even do videos that are just single rant requests if they're interesting enough. You can subscribe there, even just get me to rant about your favorite anime or whatever. And otherwise, go to goldenwitch.substack.com, where you can get my written articles. Sometimes I post bonus content and podcasts exclusive to that platform. Thanks again for watching, and never forget, Marvel forever.